Hi, welcome back to the Tech Talks podcast. I'm your host, Jack Brandwood, and this is where I speak to some of the brightest and most influential people in the tech industry in the UK. This week, I sit down with Technology Director at Cinch, Jaz Chana. We talk about the samurai mindset, how to organise an amazing team, and the importance of empowering your people.
What was really important to us was this concept of engineering excellence. We wanted to be the best engineering team, not just in Manchester, but in the Northwest. I mean, it turned out that we ended up creating one of the best product engineering teams in the UK.
For more information on this episode and Tech Talks, head over to tact-it.co.uk. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the episode. Jazz, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, look, I always like to start these things. For anyone who doesn't know who Jaz Chana is, who's Jaz Chana?
Well, I couldn't get Daniel Day-Lewis to come here and play me, unfortunately, which was the plan. He would have done a much better job of impersonating Jaz Chana. But Jaz Chana, I'm a technology director. I work for Constellation Automotive. Was former CTO of Cinch. I was there from the beginning when there were 2-3 people in a room and scaled up the organization and my team to about 200 odd plus. I've worked in tech due diligence. I've run my own startups. I've worked in large group functions, small organizations, and a variety of different things over the last 18 years. I'm a father. I've got 2 kids who work really, really hard to keep me awake at night. And I'm a level 10 wizard.
Nice. Level 10 wizard. Okay, interesting.
I made that up. Sorry, that's not true now.
See, we're going to keep that soundbite in because that's going to get a lot of people interested in the podcast. But
sorry if I do stuff like that. When I get nervous, I make stupid jokes. So
do it. It's fine. Absolutely fine. So where did you grow up, Jaz?
I grew up in East London, in a not so nice part of East London called East Ham. I lived there until I was 18 years, and then decided to go to Liverpool Uni, to completely up sticks and move to Liverpool Uni.
Why Liverpool?
I keep asking myself that question. I haven't quite figured that out. I think it was just because it was something that my friends did, and I didn't really enjoy London. It just wasn't for me for a number of different reasons. And so I just wanted to go somewhere else. I wanted a fresh start. I wanted to try a completely different experience. And it was quite unusual as well for a second generation immigrant with my background, Sikh Punjabi, to move out of the family home. Usually you find somewhere close by, you live with the family, and you kind of, build and grow the household. You don't move out and do your own thing. So it was quite, it was a pretty crazy thing to do now. I look back on it, but back at that time, it just felt like, right, if I don't get out of London, if I don't do something, I'm never going to make something of my life.
Of course. And was it always tech?
No. So I always had an interest to some extent with technology. I was an avid gamer. My dad did what most dads did in the 90s, which was buy a really expensive PC and printer and all these peripherals and then just put it in the middle of a room and sit and watch it collect dust. And none of us really knew how to use it over and above Solitaire and Winamp. Do you remember Winamp?
I don't remember Winamp, unfortunately. Okay. I remember Solitaire, but not Winamp.
It really whips the llama's ass. All right, people who watch this, if you recognise that quote, yeah. But anyways, so that's all we used it for, and I was just really intrigued by it. The internet was just coming out; it was just becoming a thing. It was back in the days we had to unplug your phone and plug the internet in, and then your mum would get really angry at you when she'd try and pick up the phone and make a phone call. Those were the days when I really got into technology, and I had a real interest in understanding how this stuff worked and what it was about, what made it tick. And so any and all opportunities to use the computer, I would take advantage of. I did a local website for the temple. This is going back 96, 95. My brother forced me to do it. He threatened to beat me up. No, he offered me some money. Still hasn't paid me, but that was kind of my first foray into it, and it really stuck. But I never thought of it as a career. I never thought of it as something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I thought of it as an interesting hobby. What I really wanted to do was be an artist, but that's not something my poor parents wanted to support.
Really? Wow. What kind of artists are we talking to?
Just anything. I used to paint, I used to draw, sketch. I used to read a lot of graphic novels. I thought I was going to be a writer or a writer. I'm not particularly great at writing because of my learning difficulties, but I thought I thought I would end up making graphic novels or something along those lines. But again, being the son of first-generation immigrants, it's not a viable career choice. Money was tight. I came from extreme poverty. My family worked really hard to put food on the table, and the only two professions available to me were doctor and lawyer. Anyone from my background back in those days can understand. I mean, it's a bit of a joke, but it's also sort of true. So telling my parents, I wanted to be an artist, how are you going to make money from that? Don't be stupid. Don't be silly. Science, maths, economics, computer science, that's what you want to get into. And even computer science back then wasn't really what it is now. It wasn't really a thing, a respected profession, if you like. So yeah, the artist thing didn't happen, and my parents forced me down the route of STEM, and it kind of went from there, really.
Wow. So from the art career not working out, obviously, to now, what was the journey, high level view of your journey?
So I left London to go to Liverpool University, and I wasn't very academic in the sense that, or at least I didn't think I was very academic. I had some learning difficulties. I didn't know it at the time, so I took a psychological examination, and I was told I had some forms of ADHD and dyslexia. But I spent so many years building coping strategies on top of this that it was hard to diagnose. What happened was, my average grades were ridiculous. I got thrown out of my first college. I got thrown out of my first university degree, and I got into a second one. I failed the first year, begged the lecturer to let me in, and a friend sat me down and he said, "What's going on? You seem like a smart guy, but you're just failing everything. What the hell's happening?" And so I don't know. Academia is probably not for me. And he said, "Well, why are you here in Liverpool? Why are you not in London? What are you doing here?" And really started to get me thinking. So then like I said, I went to see this educational psychologist, and they did the assessment. They put me in touch with a tutor, and things just completely changed from that point onwards. I went from an average grade of 35% to 95% to the point where they started to think I was cheating, and they got me to do the exams, or at least they did an interview, and they got me to do some of the exam questions sort of in person, because they thought, what's going on? You don't just make that jump.
Yeah.
And like I said, I never thought I was particularly academic. That just changed everything for me.
That's an incredible thing to mention, because I've spoken to loads of people with similar sort of stories where they're kind of confused for quite some time. Like, why am I not like everyone else? Why is my brain working this way? And it's like night and day, the difference between before you actually knew that you had ADHD, dyslexia, and it's night and day how just that sense of relief almost, just like, oh, thank God, now I know.
Yeah, and I didn't want it to be an excuse. I just thought, in my head, I'm just not smart enough. I just can't do it. It's just not for me. And by the time I figured it out, it was frustrating in a way, because I'd missed out on a lot of useful, valuable formal education just because I'd written myself off.
Right.
And to a large extent, a lot of people around me had written me off. And when I found out, I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want it to be the thing that defined me. I didn't want it to be the excuse that I used to not do something and achieve. And, I could have done other things. I could have probably got a formal diagnosis. I probably could have pushed to find out, more about why and what. And really, for me, that wasn't important. What was more important is, what effect is it having in me, and how do I use the tools that I have to achieve happiness and success in my life? And that was the important thing for me. I didn't want the learning difficulties to be a reason to fail, and I didn't want them to define me.
Do you feel like it's helped in any way, the ADHD and dyslexia, and do you think that's helped get to where you are now?
I don't know. So I don't know any better, and I don't have a point of reference. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. It's not something that I've spent a huge amount of time necessarily reflecting on. Everyone's got their own challenges. Everyone's got their own problems. For me to say mine were worse than someone else, or for me to compare myself to something that I've never really experienced, I don't think makes sense. I don't think it's right. Certainly there's things about my personality that I think have definitely helped. I do often find, to a lot of people's annoyance, that I will go off on complete tangents at times and struggle to stay on one subject. Oftentimes when I meet someone who's similar to me, it's, I could spend hours and hours and hours talking to them about certain subjects and just completely lose track of time. Now, I've got certain friends that my wife won't go near, because she knows as soon as we're together, that's it. It's like everyone else it's like the room goes dark and it's just me and that person, and we can just talk and talk and talk. But it's great. It's just a quirk of the way that my mind works sometimes. But like I said, everyone has their own challenges. I don't know any better. Maybe it has helped. Maybe it's hindered me. I don't know.
And I mean, anyone can look at your LinkedIn. You've had worked with some amazing businesses, met some amazing people along the way. And, I think recently you were the CTO, obviously, over at Cinch. Incredible project. Could you talk to us more about that, the team?
Cinch was amazing. It was such a huge achievement. Arguably one of the most successful startups in UK startup history. And I don't think anyone really believed we were going to achieve success. If you put my profile on paper and compare it to similar people who've achieved similar levels of success, I don't think you'd bet on me. I wouldn't bet on me, right? But we did it. And in large part, it was because we managed to attract some absolutely amazing people. And without that, we just wouldn't have succeeded. When we started, we were just like every other startup in Manchester, trying to convince people to join us. Oh, we're going to be the next Twitter, the next Spotify. Oh, we're the next big thing. Same story again and again and again. And it was really hard to get those few people in, attract those few people. The first few were just very, very difficult. But once we got them in, got the ball rolling, things really started to expand. Things really started to take shape, and the momentum of the ball started to get rolling. And then, of course, we had the major pivot in the organization, where we went from being in classifieds to selling cars online. We had to do that in 6 months, which, in and amongst everything else, was also an amazing achievement that I'm extremely proud of, and extremely humbled and honored to be a part of.
I know you mentioned the story to me in depth, and it was incredible what you achieved. I guess what were some of going through that journey of what you did at Cinch, was there any setbacks that you remember that were really poignant and kind of stand out?
There were quite a few, but there were loads when I think about it. But the thing was, you get into a mode where stuff just happens and you don't even think, oh, for God's sakes, it's just next challenge, go, going to overcome this. So we had 6 months to pivot the business. When I tell some people this, sometimes it comes across as a sales pitch. People often don't believe me, and it's really hard to convince them, no, this really, really happened. So you have to get more people on tact from Cinch so they can back up and corroborate the story. But anyways, we had 6 months to pivot the business. In that time, we had to build not just the website and the back-end systems, the operation systems, the MarTech stack, the customer contact center systems, the accounting platform. We also I took on board management of the IT and the third-party software services. So we had to onboard a load of third parties, integrate a load of different software systems, build all these laptops and set up this IT environment for people working within Cinch. We had to set up our own InfoSec function, and perform a load of due diligence and GRC on the suppliers that we're looking to work with. We had an existing team of, I'm going to call them .NET engineers, but they weren't .NET engineers. And we can talk a bit about this later and my views on the value of an engineer. But we had a team of about 30 odd .NET engineers, and we'd made the decision to completely pivot our tech stack, which was against the group strategy at the time. And I mean, that was really intimidating. That was really, I probably wouldn't be talking to you here right now if that didn't go successfully. That was a big, big decision what we were doing. But my team were convinced it was the right thing. So I decided to back the team, and I went in with that. So we pivoted to tech stack. We had to retrain all the existing engineers. We had to double the size of the team. We had to bring in another third party to help us build all this stuff. It was COVID, so we went on lockdown, right? We were all working remotely. It's the first time we've ever done this. We don't know how to work in this way, so we've got to figure that out as well as we go along. I just had a new baby boy, first time father. That was an intense experience. I was also building a house, and I didn't have a place to stay. And of course, COVID, I couldn't really stay anywhere for very long because it just wasn't accommodation like that available. So I was moving from month to month, from accommodation to accommodation, all the while this stuff is going on. And yeah, there were quite a lot of setbacks.
Yeah, well, like a masochist. You want the, yeah.
It was insane, but you get into a mode where it doesn't matter what happens. It's just a case of, stuff's going to happen. How do you work through it? And so I used to work in the markets, and we had this conversation because I know you used to work in the fish markets, didn't you? And you know how hard working in the markets is. I mean, it's one of the most, it is the most horrible, difficult job I've ever done. I started working when I was 14 because we just had to. I used to bunk school to go to the markets just to earn a living for the family. And you get up at 4 in the morning, you have to load up the van, you have to get there, it's cold, freezing, your hands are like, about to fall off from frostbite because you're picking up these cold bars and this cold equipment, set it all up. And then you're from 5, 6 in the morning until 6, 7 in the evening when you pack up. It's horrible. And I did pretty much all of my weekends and some of my weekdays working in the markets. Although it was hard, you can make it worse for yourself by, constantly questioning, like, why am I here? Why is this happening to me? For God's sakes, what's going on? And I guess I cultivated this, I suppose, attitude of stuff's going to happen, bad stuff's going to happen. And yeah, it's not a case of hide it all inside of you and then don't think about it and let it explode. Look, cry it out, punch a wall or something. I don't know, do something to let off the steam, to get it off your chest. And it's fine. If you want to cry about it, do it. It's fine. That's not the point. The point here is once it's done, it's done. Get over that bit and then try and figure out how you solve that problem and how you engage with that issue and how you get over it. And it's it's that kind of attitude I think that's carried me through my career and helped me through this period. I don't get me wrong, I got really angry when stuff happened at Cinch, when things didn't work out to, in the way that we expected. But you get over that quickly and it's like, right, okay, how do we solve this? How do we get together and solve this? And to be honest, it wasn't just me, it was the team as well, and their attitude and their confidence, and that gave me confidence, and yeah, we can do this, we can solve this. It was, all right, here's a problem, here's an issue, here's a challenge. Fine, it didn't work out the way it did. How do we figure it out? How do we get to the point where we can, this is our goal. What are we going to do in order to overcome this particular challenge and this particular problem? And you go from this sort of victimhood type mentality to, that's my goal and I'm going to achieve it no matter what. It's that samurai spirit.
Yes. Yeah, we're definitely going to come on to the samurai spirit. One of the things you mentioned there, and I know you're very passionate about, is surrounding yourself with the right people. You are who you hire. Yeah, you created an amazing team, right? And could you talk more to your strategy around hiring and why it's so important?
So in the early days, myself and Matt Tuplin, who was our engineering director, we sat down, we talked about, what kind of team do we want? What kind of individuals do we want? What's important to us? What's not important to us? And actually, we saw and interviewed quite a few people before we made our first hire. And we went back and forth about the kinds of values that we wanted. And it wasn't even just with Matt. I did this with Jeff Heddle, who was the CPO of Cinch at the time, and Jack Gray. We got together and we talked a lot about what's important to us, what are those values, what are the behaviors that we expect to see. Intelligent humility was a really important part of that. Passion and the drive. And I think it's good to have opinions. it's good to be opinionated, but you have to be able to disagree and commit. You have to be able to collaborate and work with other individuals that might have completely different opinions that you disagree with. And how you collaborate and how you do those things is important. So we built this idea and this vision in our head of what we wanted. And then we went out and we sold that vision, we sold that story. I was involved in, I think, the first 50 hires in terms of that interview process, and made sure that I was there and to sell that story, to sell that vision with Matt, and really get across what we wanted to do. And it was almost like putting up a flag and saying, right, this is the kind of company we are. These are the kind of people we are. And like attracts like. People like us saw that and thought, I want to be a part of that. And I want to work with these guys. Obviously, the tech stack was really important. And in fact, actually, even in the early days, we had a tech stack which was okay, bad. It was a bit overcomplicated for what we were trying to do. It wasn't until the pivot that we decided to change. But I think in the early days, what was really important to us was this concept of engineering excellence. We wanted to be the best engineering team, not just in Manchester, but in the Northwest. I mean, it turned out that we ended up creating one of the best product engineering teams in the UK. I reckon you could argue that. I think it's a pretty bold statement, but I reckon you could argue, yeah, we had one of the best product engineering teams in the country. And I was really, really proud of that.
So your advice is for anybody trying to do the same is identify who you are first, and then work from there.
Yeah, who do you want to attract? What kind of organization do you want to create? And then, what you're doing is you're putting that mirror up, you're putting that flag up. A firm believer that like attracts like, and you have to go out and you have to sell that story, and really sell it and have that pitch. Why do you want to join us? What are you getting out of it? What are we trying to achieve? Is it in line with what you're trying to do, with your career goals? Really set that out. And, oftentimes I find people will talk a lot about, the kind of a good working environment, the benefits, the pay, and that's all important. But often people don't talk about the purpose, and I think that's really, really important. Is to try and drive that point across, the purpose. We can all talk about technology, and we can all talk about ways of working. Culture is really important, but I think there's something missing around purpose, and I think we really gave people that purpose. We really worked hard on that. It's really difficult. It's weird talking about it now, thinking it through, and it's even giving some of this advice. I think to myself, that worked? Really? That was that actually happened? Sometimes I have to pinch myself, really stop myself, and I think about some of the things we did and how we managed to get all these good people. And part of me thinks maybe it was just damn luck. Maybe I just got lucky. I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. Well, I think that's fantastic advice, especially starting with the kind of people you want to attract. Like attracts like. Love that. Getting an amazing team is only part of it, right? Leadership comes into that, and I guess that's why I wanted to touch on you mentioned it earlier, so the samurai mindset, your ethos around leadership and management, and could you tell us more about that?
I'm going to try and explain this in a way that doesn't make me look like a complete and utter idiot. I think when we were talking about it, I had a few coffees, and I don't know how it came across, and it just came out. But I'll talk about it. I've not talked about this before because I just can't make it sound good. But all right, let's give it a go. It had a pretty profound effect on me growing up, and I think it's a story worth telling, I guess. But so I was a big fan of martial arts, big fan of old Japanese sword fighting movies, and a lot of modern movies are based on old Japanese sword fighting movies. And there's one in particular called Seven Samurai by Akira Kurosawa, one of the greatest directors of all time. In fact, a lot of his work inspired Star Wars, Indiana Jones, a lot of the modern Spielberg movies, and various different things. Highly recommend, look him up. Seven Samurai is the story of these Ronin who help defend this village from this gang of raiders, this protection racket. Now, back in those days in Japan, you had these shogun that were basically kings that owned areas, prefectures in Japan, and they would fight each other. And they had this warrior class that had developed called these samurai that would fight for them. And they would fight for the shogun, for glory, for their own kingdom. And quite often the shogun would die or fall in battle, and the samurai would find themselves masterless, purposeless, and they would wander around doing jobs for money and selling their services to the highest bidder. And that was the Ronin class. And in Seven Samurai, what happens is these villagers that are getting raided by this gang, they've had enough. They decide, right, we're going to die out if this continues. We need to do something about this. So they go to this local village, this nearby village, and they find a Ronin to help them, to fight for them. And this Ronin, his name was Kembe. And the story goes, Kembe ends up recruiting 6 other samurai to his cause to fight for this. Now, the interesting thing about this was the villagers couldn't pay Ronin much. All they really could give the Ronin was some food, maybe. On top of that, it was quite obvious that the 7 samurai going into battle with this gang were probably going to die, because there was 30, 40 or so of these individuals, and 7 of them. And they were heavily armored, and all they had were their swords. But somehow Kembe managed to convince these samurai, convince these Ronin to fight for these villagers. And this had a profound effect on me. And I always found this really fascinating. Watch the movie, draw your own conclusions. But for me, the way that Kembe did that was by reminding these samurai, these Ronin, what it meant to be a samurai, what it meant to be the best that you could be, to hone your craft, to fight for a higher purpose. What he did was he went to each and every individual Ronin. He built a bond, a connection. He empathized with them. He understood what they were trying to do, where they were trying to go, what they were trying to achieve, and what was missing in their life. These were masterless samurai. These were Ronin now. What was missing in their life? And he was able to connect that together to create a higher purpose, to the point where these samurai, or these Ronin, would die for him on this quest to protect this village. And it was it had a really profound effect on me. And there's a great bit in the movie where Kembe goes through this process of recruiting each samurai, and it goes through each of the individual characteristics and attributes of each of the samurai and how he manages to convince them. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I think a lot about this when I'm building teams, when I'm recruiting, when I'm talking to people. Why are they doing this? What's the point? What are they getting out of it? What's the purpose? I think as an industry, we talk a lot about mastery. We talk a lot about autonomy. How we want good technology, good projects for our engineers to attract the best people so they can build their skills. Autonomy, okay, we don't want to micromanage people, and we just want to let them get on with it. What about purpose? Oh, we'll pay good wages. Okay, well, somebody else is going to come along and pay better wages. What are you going to do then? Okay, it's wages and salary obviously is important, and a good working environment is important. And without that, they're almost table stakes. But to a certain point, it stops becoming important. It gets to a point where it's actually people want something a bit more. And especially in a market now where talent pool is shrinking, the opportunities are increasing. You have to be, I think, organizations have to be smarter about how they attract the right kinds of talent. And I think people are becoming more in tune to this. People want a sense of purpose over and above just getting paid and sitting on, beanbags and having a free kitchen, getting free breakfast and all the rest of it. I mean, that's nice, that's great, but that doesn't really hit the nail on the head. And when we were recruiting for Cinch, and I think I talked a bit about it earlier on, really drove home that point around the purpose. And I remember there was one guy, Tolly, who, he's pretty active in the tech community now, just LinkedIn Tolly, everyone knows who he is. He's absolutely fantastic tech leader. Me and him, we spent a lot of time before he accepted the job at Cinch talking to each other. I spent 2 hours at an airport lounge in Heathrow convincing him to join. He was one of the first people we recruited at Cinch. And I sold him that vision of what we were trying to do at Cinch. I sold him that vision of what we were trying to achieve and our collective purpose. But it didn't really mean anything until till it applied to him, till I could show him how our purpose was in line with what he was trying to do. And some of the things I said to him, well, most of what I said to him, I've completely forgot. But some of the things he says to me now, one of the things that really sticks out was, I said to him, forget about the Cinch brand, forget about selling cars. What's the Tolly brand? Where do you think that's going to end up? What would you like that to be in 2 to 3 years' time? How do you think you're going to build that? And he said, well, I want to do some more public speaking. I want to build my skills. I want to do something great. And I said, okay, well, in order for that to happen, we've got to make something great of Cinch. I want us to be the best engineering function, product engineering function in the Northwest. In order to do that, you've got to be the best you can be. And we've got to really push you hard to be the best engineer, to be the best speaker, to be the best thought leader. And you see, our purposes were entwined. We were all aiming for this higher purpose, we're going to be the best engineering team we can be. And I think that really resonated with a lot of people. And yeah, I got that from the Seven Samurai. So hopefully that doesn't sound too ridiculous.
Oh God, it's so powerful. I think, and just a few things that I picked up on was, that's a really great bit of advice. It's all well and good having a purpose as a business, but then how does that tie into the individual's purpose? It's like, as a business, you're like, oh, we've got this amazing purpose. How can people not get behind it? Yeah, but people are also individual, have their own goals, have their own ambitions. How can a business be a vehicle for
right.
no pun intended, obviously, for them to
drove that point home, didn't you?
Yeah, vehicle. For them to reach their goals and ambitions. Love that. Really great bit of advice. Okay. Well, look, it sounds exciting. I mean, what's on the cards for Jazz at the minute, and your current role? What's going on? Anything we need to keep an eye out for?
A few different opportunities, a few different conversations. Let's see how things go. I'm really proud of what we've done at Cinch, and I think maybe now's the time to explore other avenues. I'm currently helping other divisions in group, and doing quite a bit of work in Europe. But yeah, I mean, I can't say much at this stage, but I'm open to conversations, and yeah, I'm exploring a few opportunities. Let's see how that goes.
Well, another great thing that's happened recently, and anyone who follows you on LinkedIn will see this. You spoke at the AWS Partner Summit. What was that like? It
didn't really hit me until I got there, and we did this with InfinityWorks, who were our partner, who worked very closely with us. They're an AWS, I think it's an AWS Gold partner. I always get that wrong, and they always say, no, it's not Gold partnership, that's not how it works. But anyways, so they invited me to talk with them about the journey that we went through at Cinch and what we did. And we were heavily bought into serverless architecture, serverless first approach. I mean, we haven't really talked much about some of the technical aspects of what we did at Cinch and how it led to our success. But serverless first and our adoption of those sorts of technologies and that approach was really, really important. And our pivot to AWS was, I just can't imagine we would have done what we've done had we not done that. And so that was a story we had to, that asked me to talk about when we went to the Partner Summit. And I think I said Partner Summit. I thought, oh God, it's not the real summit, it's just the Partner Summit. And so I remember prepping some words and thinking, okay, yeah, it'll just be a couple of people in a room. And I got there, and it was a huge auditorium, and there were quite a few people there, and it was recorded, and it was actually quite a professional production. And we had to go there the night before to do a rehearsal, and I suddenly saw the auditorium. I'm like, oh no, oh damn. I often do this. I'll come into situations not realizing the full gravity of that situation, and make a complete and utter, arse of myself, and suddenly start to backtrack. And yeah, I didn't realize the Partner Summit was as big as it is. And so I didn't get any sleep that night, and I spent the whole night thinking about what I was going to say, refining the talk, and then we got on stage and we did it. And I mean, it was great. I got tons of positive feedback. A lot of people who, and I've often found this, there was a group of people that would say, no, that didn't really happen. No, you didn't do that. And a group of people, wow, that's amazing. How did you do that? Show us how you do it. And I could talk a lot about some of the specific details about how, we built this service blueprint. We had this one goal. We pivoted everything. We threw away the entire the stack that we had and started again. And most people would say, oh, well, Jazz, you got lucky. You had a complete green field. It was easy for you. You could choose all the modern technology you wanted. Well, that's because I made a really difficult decision, and I put my neck on the line to make a really bold decision early on so that we wouldn't have these problems later on. I made the decision to throw everything we'd built away and start again. Now, how many CTOs would have the guts to do that, And so, don't get me wrong, it could have turned out completely badly and I could have been out of a job, but I knew if I hadn't made that decision, it would have hampered our ability to be able to deliver later on. And I've always thought you make the hard decisions up front so it's easier later. So anyways, these are some of the things we talked about at the Partner Summit. Got lots of positive feedback. Yeah, it didn't really hit me until I got there. I saw the auditorium and even a few days afterwards. But for someone like me, a dude from Manchester, it was a real honor to be there. And oftentimes, I think I talked earlier on about, my profile, and if you compared my profile to people who'd done something similar to Cinch, you wouldn't really bet on me. And I don't think many people really believed I was going to succeed. I didn't really believe I was going to succeed, if I'm honest with you, but I just thought, I've got this opportunity, I'm going to make the most of it. And when it happened, it was, wow. It was almost like a first division team being promoted into the Premiership or winning the FA Cup against the top Premiership team. That's kind of what it felt like. And being surrounded by these amazing people at this Partner Summit, being asked by Amazon and IW to talk at the Partner Summit was, it was a great highlight of my career and a big honor. And it wasn't something I thought that would happen, when we first embarked on the journey with Cinch. Hopefully a blog post that's coming out soon about the Cinch journey. That's going to be quite interesting. We'll see some mentions of something happening at reInvent. We'll see what happens there.
Wow. Okay. Exciting. Very exciting. Last couple of questions from me. There's so much to digest here for anyone watching. You've been in the tech industry for, not to give your age away, but how long have you been in the tech industry?
I'm actually 21.
Yeah, I knew you were. Yeah, I thought that. I thought younger. I thought 19, but yeah.
I often get that.
How long around?
About 18 years. I mean, I've been a hobbyist technologist since 95. So, God, it's 25 odd years ago. I've been messing about with computers and technology. I haven't written any production code for 3-4 years now. I'm on that engineering manager pendulum. The Charity Majors talks about. She's great. She's fantastic. She's a really good article on the engineering manager pendulum, and I highly recommend people read that. And I've gone through that in my career, gone into management roles, gone back into engineering, back into management roles. And part of me thinks actually maybe I should just go back into an individual contributor engineering role. But I haven't written any production code for 3 years, and I think maybe now's the time to do something like that. But yeah, 18 years I've been in this industry for, doing a variety of different things, and not even just engineering either, right? So I had my own startup. I did a lot of stuff around product development. I would consider myself a technologist with a strong product commercial focus, and also a people and culture focus. I think that's really important.
Well, my question was, I guess, you've seen the industry develop and change and evolve. Is it one thing? If there was one thing that you could change about the industry, what would it be?
There's a lot here. Right? The whole imposter syndrome thing. I hear it so much now, again and again and again and again. And I'd like to address that. I'd like to talk about that. But I think over and above that, I think where it stems from is just leadership in the tech industry. I'd like to see more done about developing the right kinds of leadership, the right sorts of attributes, giving people the support they need to develop into those leaders, to help support others on their journey. I accidentally fell into leadership, and I didn't want to do it. The first time I walked away. The second time I went back in as an engineer. The second time I did it reluctantly, heavily reluctantly. I felt like I had a sense of duty to the team that reported into me. And then I caught the bug. But I made so many mistakes. I had to figure out a lot of it on my own. Nobody gave me any real support or guidance. I had some mentors who were able to help to a certain extent along the way, but none of them really went through the journey I went through. None of them could really talk to me with that level of empathy that some of my background was able to. And oftentimes I'd have, I'm not going to name any names, a couple of times I had some mentors who just were really inappropriate. And it got to the point where some of them still call me up and ask me for advice. And it's, oh, please, just leave me alone. It just wasn't appropriate. And so what I'd like to change, I'd like to see more good leadership. And I'd like to see more of an emphasis on developing that leadership in others. I'd like to, I don't know how, and I don't know how we solve this problem, but there's so much talent coming through into the industry, and there's so much more we could do to help support and nurture this talent. I'd like to see more done in that respect, and I'd like to see that the way we do that currently change.
Great answer. And look, last question. If today was your last day on Earth, a bit dramatic, I know, and you weren't spending time with family and you weren't on this amazing podcast, of course, what would you be doing?
Oh, what would I be doing? I'm really sad and uninteresting. I would probably be sat at home playing computer games, ordering as much takeaway and junk food as I can because I don't have to worry about not fitting into my pants, and just chilling out, playing computer games, not thinking about stuff and getting out of my head.
Love that. Love that. Brilliant. Well, look, it's been great having you on. Your story's fantastic, amazing, inspirational. Your views on leadership are really, really extraordinary and powerful. And I think anyone listening to this will really, really get a lot from it. And really excited to see Jazz in the next 12 months.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And that's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Anything we talked about will be linked in the show notes. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll catch you on the next one.